Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome to this video, guys. My name is Liaquat Zaman and this is another installment in the crash course series. So today we're going to be covering crash course on purity in Islam. This is a topic which many people ask about. Many of you guys have studied about purity. Purity is a very important thing in Islam, and if you're not familiar with this, then inshallah in this episode you're going to learn all about purity, or as much as we can cover about purity in Islam. So first of all, when it comes to purity, purity is essential in not only when it comes to a person being clean in their physical appearance and their body, the clothes, etc., but also when it comes to their belief system as well. Now we're not going to be talking about the belief system, that's a separate topic. Inshallah, I might do a crash course on belief as well, but here we're going to be talking about more to do with the purity that a person, a Muslim, covers when they are living their day-to-day life. So first of all, a person, a Muslim, should worship and pray to God, pray to Allah. Praying to God, praying to Allah, or showing devotion to Allah is a very important part of a Muslim's life. We don't do it all day. We don't spend 24 hours doing it. However, there are certain times in the day, certain times in the year, certain times in the month maybe, that we have to show a certain type of, or certain acts of devotion, which we call prayer. So when we pray, we have to be especially clean, right? So cleanliness for prayer is the core, you can say, of why purity is important for Muslims. So Allah, we say God, Allah, for him, when we pray, we have to be very clean. We have to be in a state of purity. And this is really why purity has been legislated, because Allah is the highest. Allah is the super being. Allah is, Allah. He is the creator of the universe. He deserves to be worshipped at the highest level. And so a Muslim, a person, a human being, has to be in the highest state. And the highest state is a state of purity. And so the opposite of this would be the state of impurity. So to understand purity, we need to understand what purity is all about. So what things are impure? That's what we're going to be looking at right now. So impure things can be divided into two types. We have a sense of spiritual impurity, and we also have physical impurity as well. So if we have this concept of things that are impure, then we can understand that spiritual purity is necessary, just as physical purity is also necessary. Now, what kind of things would constitute physical impurities? So a human being, they live their lives, and their lives that they live, it's like a mixture of good deeds they do and a mixture of bad deeds they do. So there's some things that we do which are good, some things that we do which are not so good, and we are actually right in between two types of creatures. We are in between angels, which represents the good, and we are also in between other animals that live on earth, walk around, roam on earth, and they are generally considered to be of a lower status than humans. And so those things that we resemble animals in, we would say that we are in a lower state, and those things that we resemble angels in, we can say that we are in a higher state. So therefore, physical impurities would consist of anything which is very animalistic, like anything that comes out the two passages, the front passage of a human being and the back passage of a human being. Anything that comes out from there would be considered to be something which we resemble animals in. Likewise, blood. Animals have blood. So things that blood, pus, all these kind of things that come out of wounds. We also resemble animals when it comes to regurgitating what's in our stomachs, vomit. And we also have certain things that the lawgiver, God, Allah, has told us that they are unlawful for us to consume or use. So any sort of substance which is unlawful for us to consume or use, we kind of understand from that because God doesn't want us to do this, then the ruling of this would be that it's not something which is pure. It's actually impure for us. So that would include things like alcohol. That would include things like, animals which are prohibited for us, pork, pigs, etc. That's something which is considered to be a physical impurity. Right, so now we can actually look at things which are considered to be methods of actually cleaning them. All right, so when it comes to cleaning all of these things, how do we clean this? How do we become clean, basically? Right, so let's say, for example, a person has something which is impure on them. How do they clean themselves? So we have to understand, we have to be clean when we're praying to God. We have to be clean in all the things that are connected to our body. So body, clothes, the ground that we actually stand on, they all have to be clean of these things mentioned above. So we have to remove the impurity, basically. So the default of all things is considered to be pure, you can say, unless one of these things above is actually present. So the idea is we remove these things. So we remove, let's say, for example, urine, or we remove feces, or we remove vomit, or blood, or pus, or etc. Once we remove it, then we are considered to be in a pure state. So there are several ways that you can remove things. Number one is you uplift it. So you remove it by uplifting it from whatever material it's attached to. Number two is we dry it up. So this can be, in various forms, maybe the wind, maybe air, maybe heat, some other way that you can use to dry up that form of impurity. Number three is we simply just cut it out, right? So we just take it, the piece, and we just cut around it, and the impure piece we remove, and everything else now is considered to be pure, and we can pray in that, let's say, clothing without a problem. The fourth is actually interesting, which is transformation. So something which is impure, if it goes through a form of transformation, if it changes its properties, if it changes into something else, it actually is considered to be now pure. It's no longer considered to be impure. So if a person technically was to take some substance, urine, let's say, and they transformed it into something else, let's say they transformed it into another substance like water, for instance, I don't know, through some chemical change, that substance is now a new substance. So first of all, what kind of things uplift impurity? So this can be done in two general ways. One of the ways is for a person to actually wash away the impurity. So you have urine on your clothes, you have blood on your clothes, you have any sort of substance which is considered to be impure, you simply remove it by washing it. And how do you wash it? By washing it in such a way that the impurity will disappear. All right, so remember we said the idea is removal. So you have impurity on your clothes, you wash it, the water washes away the impurity, clothes go back to their normal state, and now you're clean. The other way is for you to wipe it. So there are certain materials do not require washing. Washing is only required when the impurity would be stuck and stubborn on the material itself. If it's not stubborn, if the material is a very non-porous form of material, very metallic, shiny kind of material, then all you have to do is get a tissue or something and just wipe over it, and it would be considered to be clean. Okay, so for instance, like what kind of things can this include? So washing, you can just put it under the tap, wash it, you can spill water over it and you can wash it, rinse it out. Even if you're going toilet and you've done number one, you've done number two, you've urinated, you defecated, then all you have to do is just wash the area of that body, the front part, the back part, and it's considered to be clean. Likewise with wiping as well, very simple. All you have to do, if the area, the material is a wipeable material and it won't leave any traces, then like a cup, for instance, a glass which has some impurity on this, it's got some alcohol in there, you spill it out, you wash it out, or you can just wipe it with something clean and it's gone. The second that we said about drying up, so let's say for example on some ground a child has urinated on the ground, the impurity is obviously on, it's moist, it's wet. So when it dries over a period of time due to air, wind, heat, whatever you want, it dries up, it's gone, it's not detectable anymore, you can't smell it, you can't sense it. So now we're considered to be in a clean state now. So the drying is like the removal, a natural remover of the impurity. Then we have the third, which we said was cutting out. This was like a drastic measure, yeah, a drastic measure. It's impure, so logically if you were to cut it out, the rest of everything else remains clean, and so you don't really have any sort of issue in praying in that sort of a garment that you're wearing. So let's say, for example, someone had a long dress. On the side of the dress there's impurity. There was no way to remove that. I mean, you can actually, technically, you can cut it. Now, you don't have to cut it, but I'm just giving you an example of you can cut it. The thing to remember also is Allah, He has legislated these laws, but does not burden anyone more than they can bear. So God does not burden you with things in your life which is too difficult for you to do in practicing Islam. So if it comes to a situation where you have impurity on your body or clothes and it's difficult to remove, you don't have to resort to cutting out, right? You can actually keep it on you and you'll be considered to be in an exempted state, right? So there is an exemption, you can say, an exempted state that you're in. But I'm just mentioning the cutting out as a means of removal, right? But you don't have to resort to cutting out, especially if the dress is very expensive. God allows you, Allah allows us to have expensive clothing, and then to cut that expensive clothing to remove a small amount of impurity would be something which is quite harsh and difficult. And so the fourth is transformation. So transformation is, like we said, imagine you had alcohol and you left it in a certain place, or you added some chemicals to it and it became another substance, for example, like vinegar. Vinegar is actually made from alcohol. You've probably been to the shops and you found white wine vinegar, red wine vinegar, cider vinegar. All of these vinegars are generally made from alcohol. So they go through a transformation and now they are considered to be vinegars, a new substance, and these are considered to be clean. So transformation is another way for anything to actually become something new. So any sort of impure substance that we have in our times, if it goes through a chemical transformation, that's considered to be sufficient for the item to have the impurity removed from it and no longer for that to be impure. Okay, so that's the side where we're talking about physical impurities. Now let's look at spiritual impurities. So spiritual impurities is basically one thing, and that is anything which is impure that exits the body. So exiting of impurity from the body is considered to be the thing that puts you into a impure state, ritually impure state. Right, so just as we have physically impure states, the things that we mentioned on the right hand side of the screen, now we have spiritually impure states. For example, if urine exits the body, we resemble creatures more, we resemble animals more, and therefore our status, it drops, our state goes down, we become in a more impure state. Blood comes out, anything of that sort exits the body, we are now in a state which is considered to be impure. So we should try to clean ourselves, basically. So the method of cleaning physical impurity was removal of the impurity, but ritual impurity, spiritual impurity, cannot be uplifted by simply just washing it. You have to follow instructions that are given to us by God. So God actually teaches us of how we can clean ourselves spiritually. So how do we clean ourselves spiritually? Well, it depends on the kind of impurity or the state that we're in. So if we are in a state where simply impurity has exited from our bodies, it's just come out of our bodies, then this is called a minor state of impurity. It's not really too bad. It's a minor state. But if impurity exits our body and there is some sort of extra thing involved, there's like intimacy involved, penetration into the private parts, or there's some sort of monthly cycle that the women go through, menstruation, that this is also something which it's kind of extra. It's an extra thing added to impurity. So because of this state is considered to be a higher state, or not a higher state, a more stronger state of impurity, which you call major ritual impurity. So you have minor ritual impurity and you have major ritual impurity. So these are the two states that we generally have. So when it comes to let's start off with the major ritual impurity. So imagine this is our friend, and this friend of ours, he goes into this state, he has intimacy, or he orgasms, or woman who has a menstrual cycle. So now they've finished this, now they are in a state where all their body is considered to be impure. So they have to wash all of their body, right? So you want to stand in front of God, you want to stand in front of Allah, and you want to pray. You have to make sure that all those desires that were fulfilled, they are cleansed. Your body is cleansed from that state, and now you qualify to stand in front of the most pure Allah himself. So you wash from head to toe, you wash yourself thoroughly with water, and your body has to be washed fully, because it isn't difficult to do. It's not hard for people to do it. People don't really have this problem every single day. Maybe one or two people do, but most people on earth would go into this state maybe a few times a month, you can say. Yeah. And this is something which actually is easy for people to do. So therefore, just a simple wash of the body, and Bob's your uncle, you're clean. The other type is where you have minor impurity. Now, minor impurity would be where the things that actually impure exit the body. So what kind of things exit the body? Urine, you have feces, you have blood, vomit. So now the question comes, is that how often would these things exit the body? Would it be more regular, or would it be less regular? So you'd say more regular, wouldn't you? You would say nearly every single day a person has to go toilet, and therefore they would go into a state of impurity. Every single day a person might experience, maybe, flatulence or anything of that sort. Even cutting themselves could be more regular. And so this is why a person has to clean themselves. However, because this is more frequent, it's going to become more difficult for us to wash our entire bodies. So the ruling here has been made easy. God has told us, Allah has told us, we only have to wash certain parts of our body: the face, the arms, the feet, and wipe the head. Only 4 things that we have to do: wash the face, wash the arms, wash the feet, and wipe the head. Simple as that. Because this is more frequent. The more frequent something is, the more easier the ruling becomes, and the less frequent something is, the more stricter the ruling becomes, right? So this is how the legislation in the Quran works. So that's why partial body washing is required when you have a minor impurity. And this is something which, because it's daily, it's based upon the ruling of ease. Anyway, and then if a person asks the question, well, if a person is impure, he's impure. Whatever the reason is, he's impure. And so the outcome should be the same. A person should have to wash the entire body. We say yes, that's true. However, because this is something which is very frequent, we don't want that person to go into any difficulty, and so Allah has given us an easier ruling to follow in this matter. Now, so much so that if a person has footwear on, wearing some footwear covering their feet over their ankles, they are even allowed in certain situations to wipe over the footwear with wet hands instead of washing the feet. Right? Because people wear footwear, people walk around, it's difficult to keep taking them off to wash the feet, and so the Prophet, peace be upon him, allowed for people to wipe over the feet in these situations. So wiping is legislated to make it easy for people to be able to wear footwear and not have to always take them off. So these are some examples of, like we said, ease. But going back to what we were saying, you have major ritual impurity and you have minor. Now, there will be certain situations in life where you don't have access to water, because the above can only be achieved by using H2O water. So you're going to be in certain situations where you don't have access to water, and so you can't use any other substance to perform wudu. Like we said, the minor ritual impurity is cleaned by this performance of what we call wudu, and the major ritual impurity is cleaned by a performance which we call ghusl, bathing. So now a person might not be able to get access to water, right? So we can only use water. But what if a person has no ability to be able to use water for whatever reason? Let's say, for example, a person might be ill, they can't touch water, it harms them more, or the water is too cold for them to use, or maybe the water is in a place which is too far for them to go to reach the water, it's too hard, it's too difficult. So in all these situations, a person has no access to water and is unable to use water. What do? Yes, the Quran tells us that this person can perform what we call dry ablution. So dry ablution is simply a method where a person, they tap the ground. So with their hands, they will tap the ground, and then they will wipe their faces and they will wipe their hands, arms, and that is the substitute of performing wudu cleaning yourself from minor impurity and cleaning yourself from major impurity, bathing. So you can't take a bath, you can't perform wudu, there's no water available. You can actually do dry ablution, and this will suffice for the previous two. So like we said, tap the ground, number one, and number two is you wipe over your hands and your face. Now, a very important thing to understand at this stage is when we are cleaning ourselves because of spiritual impurity, then we have to, whenever we perform these actions, we have to perform these actions to cleanse ourselves. However, when it comes to other things out there, like for example things which are not related to spiritual impurity, then it's simply a matter of uplifting the impurity. So spiritual impurities require following a certain procedure of how to cleanse ourselves, and physical impurities, it simply is a matter of removing the impurity. Whatever substance you use, you don't even have to use water to clean that. Okay, now one last thing I just want to talk about here, which is the idea of certain things in life, certain food that are considered to be clean or impure. So for example, take animals. We are not allowed to eat animals unless these animals are slaughtered. And why is it slaughtered? Because the animals contain blood, and the blood is something which has to be removed, because we said blood, spurting blood is more specific, the term spurting blood they have inside of them. God tells us that this is something which is impure. You cut the throat, you let the blood come out. Or even hunting, you hunt an animal, you pierce the animal, blood comes out and it dies on its own. That animal is consumable. We are allowed to eat that animal, and it now becomes clean for us, as long as it's not a pig, and as long as it's not an animal which is a predatory animal. So the animal now becomes clean. Now, as an extension to this also, if the animal has now become clean, what if an animal dies and it has skin and we want to use that skin? Basically leather. We want to use leather of an animal, but this animal has not been slaughtered. You go to a shop, you want to buy a leather jacket, but the animal was not slaughtered in the Islamic way, or did not die in this particular way, and you want to use this leather. And what's the ruling for this then? So the leather contains, the reason why the leather is impure is because it has impurities in the blood. Once that blood has been removed from the skin of the animal now is considered to be clean by a process known as tanning. So remember we said the blood inside the animal is impure. So once you've removed the blood, the moisture from the hide of the animal, the skin of the animal has been uplifted, has been removed. The animal skin now becomes clean for us. The leather, you can use it, you can make shoes from it, you can make a jacket from it, anything you like. Okay, right, let's go and summarize now. So the main thing is we want to do everything for the purity. And why do we want to do for purity? Because we have to we have to show obedience to Almighty Allah. And the epitome of obedience in the day is prayer. So when we stand for prayer, we have to be in a clean state. And we said this prayer itself is very important because it lifts us up to reach the status for us qualifying for worshipping God. And we only have to do this a few times a day, but we have to remove impurities from ourselves, whether those impurities are physical impurities or whether those impurities are spiritual. And with that, we finish, alhamdulillah, this crash course. I hope you guys have benefited from this. If you have have any questions on this, you can ask me, inshallah. Otherwise, I will hopefully see you guys in the next video. Thank you very much, patrons, for all of your support. And also those of you guys who want to become patron, if you become a patron, basically what do? You will be supporting me, funding this channel, helping me make more videos so that I can spread or teach the teachings of Islam to people around the world. People can watch all my videos for free of charge. They can watch them, they can learn from them, they can benefit, and you get loads of reward, inshallah. Sadaqatun jariyah, continuous reward you get, and you get loads of other perks as well. You can check out my Patreon page. Comments in the description is a link, and you get access to videos like Usul al-Shashi if you're interested in that, Maqamat al-Hariri, Sharh Qatr al-Nada, Mantiq, and also soon we're going to start Muqaddimah Ibn Salah as well. So this is only for my patrons. Thank you very much. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you very much guys for watching this video, and again thank you to all my patrons as well for all your support. Jazakumullah khair, may Allah reward you immensely. If you guys want to become a patron, then links in the description below. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.